and welcome to the DIY Photo Organising podcast, focusing on topics to help you with your photo management. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Photos in Order. Hi, Fiona.
Hi, Chantal. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, really well. Looking forward to this episode today.
Yes. It is a very special episode because today we are actually going to talk about a very relevant topic. And unfortunately, it's become a reality for many people around the world. And we are talking about photo loss.
Yeah.
However, it's not just any photo loss, like, when you lose your phone or something without having it backed up. We are talking about losing everything, including your photos. So that would mean,
It's a sensitive one, yeah.
For example, in a bushfire, and, as you know, we're from Australia in Melbourne, and bushfires is just an ongoing topic, and last summer has been exceptionally terrible again with lots of fires and floods and storms. It just didn't end. And currently in the US there are huge wildfires as well in California, and even here in Australia, even though it's so early in spring, there were already the first fires up in Queensland. So we've both been affected by natural disasters in one way or other, but luckily we never personally lost photos or even worse, a home. So, it's really hard. We can't even imagine how that must feel. So we are very honored to have a special guest today. And she's something who has actually gone through that. She has experienced this firsthand and has kindly agreed to share her experience with us and our listeners, with the hope that this might, help you and us in the future. So a very warm welcome, Karen Ostenried. Hello.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Karen. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
We really, really appreciate that. Before we get started, I'd like to read out a little bit about Karen. She was featured only just this year in January in The Project on TV. She was also the guest on several podcasts and radio stations. She's the author of Present This and Picture Them Naked.
Fascinating.
Yes,
love
I
the
think
title
we
of
have
that
to
one.
go and read that. She's the speaker of experimental learning, health is wealth, what business leaders can do to support the well-being in their organization, and topics of leadership, development, recovery, and personal growth. She is very passionate about human behavior, sustainability, lifelong learning, and creativity. As well as being a science nerd, EAL accredited facilitator, she is also a shared tree practitioner who develops communities and organizations using technology and the power of gratitude.
Wow.
It's a lot.
It is. It is.
So, Karen, it's going to be over to you. So, just for our listeners, and especially those, who don't live in Australia, you have unfortunately lost everything in the Black Saturday fires that happened 11 years ago. And so, but before we go there, how are you doing today?
Well, as shocking as this might sound, we're actually still recovering. So there's different stages after you lose everything, especially when your region loses things. So we had many battles after the fires in 2009, especially we had to have some serious negotiations and even down to threats to get paid out for the insurance. The building codes changed. We had two horrific builders, and one ended up going through VCAT, which is a legal system. And this was all on top of kind of trying to clear the property and sort out what you're going to build next with the new restrictions and stuff. And so we are, although I've rebuilt, so I've started two businesses. So I started one business which developed into the existing business, and my partner has his own business now. We still, I wouldn't say our property is completely rebuilt, but we're in a very good mental space. Even with COVID, it certainly has brought up, you know, the stresses on your well-being and your mental capacity. But I think we're doing extremely well. One, because we live in an absolutely picturesque, magnificent region of the country, and we have space. So we live on a property. So we've got 20 acres plus, you know, lots of land around us, which means we're not kind of locked in boxes or, you know, got neighbours or don't have to worry about the social distancing as much. And being in the country, we're also used to being in semi-isolation, I suppose. And I think a lot of country towns are used to kind of having things restricted anyway. So I think we're like right at this point in time in the COVID pandemic, we're actually doing okay.
So you've mentioned you've got a business or even multiple businesses. So what do you do? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I was a medical research scientist originally back in the day, and I was a professional singer and entertainer, and pre-fires actually had a singing and performance school. So when the studio got wiped out with the house, I was offered some space in one of my students' properties. So I used that for the next kind of 3 to 5 years because I knew that was critical for their recovery, and it worked really well. But then when we had all our building issues here, and all the students were kind of slowly growing up and moving away from the area or had moved away, then I decided to close it down because the community wasn't in a financial state to actually support that type of business. And then I kind of moved over, what skills can I take as a business? And of course, from stagecraft, I decided to help people in public speaking, presentation skills. And particularly the mindset, because, you know, stage fright, all of those things still occur to even the best speakers. And so I still do that on the side now, but to a less extent. And I also kind of wanted to focus on communication, both the internal monologue as well as what we say to others around us and how that impacts results. So I really got into these the human side, or the human behavioural side. And then as a part of our recovery, I discovered equine assisted learning or equine assisted therapy. And I thought, oh my God, this is so powerful. It's so fast. This is a perfect medium to help people realise how to change quickly without being offended.
Right.
So,
okay.
Wow.
So I thought, oh, this would be perfect for the communication piece and also for leadership and business owners. I had been in the C-suite in science and had to really have high skilled people skills.
Right.
Not all scientists have them, so I was often putting out a lot of spot fires that they created in their wake. So yeah, and had developed that communication piece, and I think that actually came from stagecraft.
Yeah.
When you're on stage, you have to read your audience. You have to be able to change the dynamic and the energy in the room very quickly in order to keep them. So I think those skills kind of that I passively learnt by being on stage, I was able to transfer into business life. So then when I combined that with the horses, I thought, oh my God, this is the perfect scenario. And then on top of that, since COVID, I've expanded and become part of the Share Tree organisation. And that is because I needed to measure the results of what I was teaching leaders, teams, organisations and individuals. There was no measurement of soft skills.
Right.
So how did you do that then, Karen? How did you Yeah, how does
So
the
I
measurement of that, or where does that sort of blend in with the communication? I'm fascinated by
Mm.
how that
how
sort
it all
of
fits
measurement of
together.
that. Yeah, yeah.
It's very amazing because it's more than just communication. Obviously, it's empathy, it's listening skills, it's basically reframing situations and reframing your idea of others in
Mm-hmm.
order to change your
Mm,
behavior and how you go. So, how what ShareTree uses is a very in-depth app that they designed, and it's based on the research that they did before they put this app together was phenomenal. So it is a survey, an online survey that organizations can roll out to all of their staff, and
mm,
then it does all the I don't know the technology behind it or the
Mm.
computations or the algorithms or whatever you like to call it. The IT stuff is not my area of expertise.
mm.
They managed to put that all together to give you a series of metrics on
Right.
leadership, collaboration, and feeling empowered, feeling listened to,
Mm-hmm.
and that all goes back to the organization
Oop.
as a then as a business trainer or a coach or leader in the organization, we can say,
Yep.
okay, there is a deficit here,
Mm-hmm.
and so let's just focus on that topic because
Mm.
leadership covers a huge amount of topics that one needs to
Mm,
to
Yeah.
manage.
Yeah.
So this just
yeah.
helps quantify where they're at,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
pinpoints where they need to focus their attention the most, and then
Hmm.
work on that. And then it has an ongoing function.
Mm-hmm.
So each month, people just plug into this app, and then they get a report back. So you
Mm.
can actually see the improvement month by month.
Improvement. Yeah. So I'm interested, obviously from the sound of your sort of career path in different areas, you cover like such a gamut of stuff, which is just such a broad range of knowledge and experiences. Um, with your passion, obviously, for this sort of area of communication and it's a very personal, relatable type of area that you've sort of touched on in all the different areas that you've done.
Hmm.
Coming into obviously the devastation and the experiences that you've had through the Black Saturday, and even as you said, still really going through the recovery and the journey of that. With something that we deal so personally with, obviously with photographs. And memorabilia and that personal side of that, I guess, tangible type memories that can be a huge part of the communication and the memory and this self-reflection that you've talked about, this internal self conversations that people
Mm.
go through. Could you share with us what your just experiences from your own personal sort of photographic memories? Were you, how did you cope with that? Were you in a situation with being able to save any of those, or did you have them backed up, or how have you? What was your personal experience in that situation
So
with your? Yeah.
yeah, so in 2009, not all mobile phones had cameras then,
Hmm.
so we didn't have that luxury. And also cloud saving or cloud virtual spaces were only available in organizations. So we had it where I worked in science at
Mm.
that time, but it was only to back up scientific data. It wasn't open to the public like it is now.
Yeah, I see.
And in those days you had kind of things saved on floppy disks and CDs.
Mm,
USBs were just starting out, so we didn't have the technology available to us.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people kept their negatives from their old photos in a safety deposit box in banks.
Okay.
We had, being in a fire area, we knew our fire drill and our
Mm-hmm.
precautions and stuff. We actually had a fire, what we call a firebox, which we had all our photos and negatives in that tub. It was quite a big tub,
Mm-hmm.
and
mm,
that was in case of fire. We would put it in the car and evacuate.
Mm-hmm.
But you
mm,
can't plan these things, and unfortunately, and normally in spring, we would take that box down to my mother's in Melbourne, along with some antiques and a few precious things that we wanted. But in 2009, as fate would have, we didn't do that year. So the box was still in the house and all of the other stuff was still in the house. We didn't put any negatives in the bank vault, simply because we were both working full time and we had a farm to run. And so there wasn't any, downtime to sort through photos and, put this there and other places. So unfortunately, even though we had the box, we didn't have the opportunity to remove the box, or we didn't, for whatever reason it was, I can't remember, we didn't take that down to my mother's. So after the fires, we pretty much lost everything except for a photo album that I'd resigned from science a week before the fires, and on my parting farewell, I actually took in some photos of me as a professional entertainer in a 70s glam rock band, and I'd accidentally left it at work when I left that day, and so that was our only kind of photos that we had left. And so it was, the hardest thing was, and this is kind of something that people don't think about, that I thought about kind of moving up to this, is our hobbies and passions were horses. And when you're horse riding, at that stage, you don't often take photos of what's going on, especially when both of us were riders, so we're both either in the saddle or whatever. But we did have some really good professional photos of us in a cross-country course in the dining room, and we actually never, because that was a professional one, we never actually took a photo of that for safekeeping. So one of the things that we haven't been able to replace is the photos of the horses that we lost, because family and friend weren't interested in it, so they had no cause or thought to take photos of us when they came here, or with the horses. So we lost all of those. Other people, so the two in-laws had wedding photos, so that was okay. And the other thing that we could never get back was, for our 40th birthdays, we took a trip to the Kimberleys in WA, and the photographs and the videos that we had of that trip were just phenomenal. It was really kind of the trip of a lifetime, and of course that all got lost in the fires as well. So things like your hobbies that that other people are not interested in, they won't have photos to replace.
That's a good point.
And particular holidays, these days you'll put it on your Facebook or your socials and have those shots there. Again, I wasn't a big fan of Facebook at the time. It was just starting, and most people were just taking photos of their breakfast, the lunch and dinner, and it wasn't something that was kind of I saw the benefit of. So these days we have that. So if worse comes to worse, you still got your Facebook, which is cloud-based, or other things that are cloud-based. So, and I probably could have backed up digital photos on a hard drive, but hard drives were super expensive then. And they only held very little, and photos, of course, quite large in size. So, so a lot of things have changed.
Did you have photos down at your mum's place in Melbourne? Did you have childhood photos that you've been able to recover in any way?
Yes. Luckily, my mum is a massive photo hoarder.
We know a few of those.
The other thing that we lost that was irreplaceable was, I had two beautiful portraits of my grandparents. And so my father was German, and they'd been sent out from Germany, and they were absolutely beautiful and beautifully framed. I never took a photo of those. So, if you've got old photos of especially relatives and historical photos, it's really important to take digital photos of those and save them to a cloud these days. So I could never get those portraits back. I could never get any great photos of the horses back. I contacted friends in WA when we were living over there, And we had one friend who'd taken photos because she'd done a Bowen therapy course on horses, and she had the Bowen therapy photos of our horses, and that's about all we have left of those, unfortunately. So,
Oh,
but yeah,
wow.
so portraits from past generations that won't be
Yes.
digital,
Yeah.
you know, or negatives, digitize those and save them to a cloud or to a hard drive that's in some other place.
Yeah, it's
And the
interesting you
hobbies.
say about the hobbies and passions. That's really interesting because it's so true. Like you say, I'm sure others, that are listening probably, may not have thought of it like that before. Just capturing, deliberately capturing some images of things like that, because they, our memories are so we can bring back so much with photographs,
Yes.
and being sensitive to the loss of that won't take away the memories that you have of those horses, and they'll be treasured forever for you. But photographs just carry another level of being able to recall those memories in ways
Yes, absolutely.
that
And
are
the
precious.
and the other kind of thing that I'm very guilty of is I still take, I don't take as many photos as many of my other friends, but I don't sort through them. I
Yeah.
don't sort them and get rid of the useless ones enough. And as a consequence, even now, I'm still guilty of it. I've got thousands of photos, and could probably kind of par that down to at least a third, if not a quarter of those, if I just kind of
Yeah.
went through. It's a lot easier now with digital
Yes.
and saving, so that's not as necessary. But I think that was probably one of the reasons why I never converted my old photos, is because there were so many to
Yes.
sort through, required
Yeah.
a dedicated days of free time to do it,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
having a busy life,
Yes.
like a farm, full-time work, plus I had the school as well. There was just no spare time
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
to do it.
Exactly. And so now we're 11 years on. And so what would you say? I guess the question is, do you have any sort of backups currently with your existing photos that you have now? Like you say, you could cull them out. There's a lot more there that that on its own. But what do you do currently then, Karen, for your own photos now, having been through that in the past?
So I do use a cloud-based storage. So I do have some on like a Google Drive.
Yep.
But some of those is because of the work that I do, because and luckily I have taken lots of photos when I'm working with clients and the horses, because we review what happened in the arena via the photos, and that
Okay.
helps their memory. So they have access to that. So luckily, my clients have access to the photos we take, and I have also set up a couple of folders for photos cloud based. But I'm still very guilty of not sorting through photos and selecting them. But the one thing is, I don't have a lot of photos. I used to have a ton of photos and portraits in our old house,
Yeah.
and I haven't reprinted them, mainly because the house is not finished. And yeah, but I haven't reprinted them. I probably will. And I managed to get, my mother had a copy of the one of the grandparents' portraits. So I've got that, but they're sitting kind of in storage at the moment before, until the building, or we get a house finally in the end. So yeah, I do back up on the cloud though. Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's with our 5 golden rules that you might have seen or read,
Yeah.
that's the rule number 1: back up. Even if you don't do
Yeah.
anything,
Yeah.
that's
At
already
least you've
good.
got
And
that.
it's
Yeah.
it's in some cases, some people don't even back up, and then it's
Yeah.
gone. And whatever we always say, whatever you do, make sure you've got a backup. That's the most
Yeah.
important step.
And
Yeah.
one thing that people wouldn't be aware of. So I was interstate at the time of the fires, and I had a laptop which did have some photos on
Right.
it.
Yes.
But when we came back for insurance purposes, you had to take photos of everything,
Yes.
and then I would save them on that laptop because we didn't have very good internet at that time.
Yeah.
The infrastructure wasn't set up.
Mm-hmm.
But what I noticed is, and I had a really good folder of just straight after the fires and the progress along the way. But then one time I upgraded that laptop and lost all the photos.
Oh my gosh, no.
no.
So that's
Oh.
really annoying. So I've kind of then gone back and trying to find the camera and the little kind of
Yes.
memory sticks,
Yes.
memory, whatever they're called, the sand discs.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I still haven't found, the body of photos that I had, which is a little bit frustrating.
Yeah.
So I'm
Oh, you've really been through the gamut, haven't you? Oh, you
Yeah.
poor thing. My goodness.
I'm interested to know. You I think you mentioned something really important before, where you said you know in theory what you need to do in terms of the photos, with the backups, and you doing this, but you feel guilty because you feel you don't cull enough and sort them enough. But you mentioned also that we've all got really busy lives.
Yeah.
So in sort of terms of helping others, do you have any tips that you would share with them, apart from what you have already mentioned, how to make sure that this doesn't happen to you, maybe?
One of the things, well, apart from, so I used to have a distrust of backing up things, and you see today with security and all of those things. So I was quite reluctant to back up into cloud services because we are at the mercy of those.
Yes.
But I would probably more likely to back up on a portable hard drive. I have much more trust in that. And then I'm thinking, well, hang on a second. People backed up on floppy disks in the 80s and 90s, and nobody can access them because no one has a computer that takes the floppy disks. So, and we had our wedding video was on VHS, and you have to get them changed to DVD and those things. So as technology improves, one way of storage becomes non-existent. So one of the things is so when after a new technology has been established, I wouldn't do it straight away because that's when they're kind of testing and measuring and fixing faults. But maybe a year or two in, kind of saying, okay, think about redoing that and actually planning it. Like people plan their holidays.
Yes.
People plan their work. And I'm guilty because I don't do this, but I still have a very, very full list of things to do. But if they were really kind of precious about it, I was with the photos. The biggest loss was losing the horses. Yes. So everything else paled into insignificance. But people, the people who were hardest hit were the ones who had children and lost all the baby photos. And so when they had when the children had their 21st, there was no photo board for them, or there was no kind of PowerPoint going on to show everyone at their 21st. I think they were really hardest hit. Yes. With that. So, but I do have some friends who are super organized, and when their kids, I think that when they're 18, one of my friends would go through and put an album together of each child's thing. So on their 21st, she had them already, and now you can convert them to photo books.
Yes.
So what I would probably do when we do move into a house would be to pick my most important photos and make them into a photo book that sits on your coffee table rather than have them kind of, and you can, and I would probably still have that firebox if we were still in a fire area, so that I could do that. And I would probably back up on the the portable hard drive. But I think that people, if you've got kids, then it's a no-brainer.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. So that would have been my next question. You mentioned the plan. So did you change anything with your plans now? Like bringing the box every spring to the city to keep it safe. Like now with your drives or backup drives or whatever, do you still do that, or is that sort of become plan of the annual fire plan review and
Yeah,
things like that?
excuse me. So we just take the two computers now, because just about everything's on the
Right.
two computers. So it makes it
Yeah.
slightly easier. In, because you still, after, if everything's gone, you still have to get your birth certificates replaced,
Yes.
your
Yeah.
passports replaced.
Yeah.
There's so many things to be replaced at the one time. And even people kind of were sending me straight away after the fire. So this is another tip. If you know someone that's lost everything, whether it be, just a single house fire or a natural disaster, if you're their friend and you're fine, go through your photos for them and put them aside onto a USB or onto
Yeah.
something, or put them in a folder in the cloud for them,
Yes.
because at the time they
Yeah.
won't have time
Yes.
to actually do anything with them.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
know that some people said, "Oh, I've got this and I've got that." We were living in limbo, a house kind of hopping, if you like, for the first 4 months after the disaster. And all you've got is a garbage bag full of donated clothes that you need to bare essentials. So, even though people meant well, you're in no
Right.
capacity to deal
Yes.
with them,
Yes. Yeah.
or they could be really nice and put together a photo book out of those, so that they could give it to them at a later date when they had their
Yes.
housewarming or something like that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
that's
really good point. That is, yeah, to be able to help them out, because you're dealing with so much in that situation.
Yeah.
And while it's on your mind, it's definitely not something you can just sort of take on at that time
No, it's not a
That's
and
right.
sort
priority.
out.
You've got other stuff
And
to do.
Bernie's mum did a really good thing. She was slowly putting her album of when Bernie was a kid and everything else together, and she gave it to him for his next major birthday, one of the milestones. So, and that was several years after the fires, which was really nice, because that was kind of when you have your birthdays, hopefully it's the time to sit down
Yeah.
and reflect on your life and where you are and where you want to go to, or what to next. So that was really quite a precious gift to receive. And I've since inherited all of my mother's photos. And
Yeah, yeah.
and haven't had a chance to sort through those. Although she did a really good job when she, in the last couple of years, when she moved out of her house into the retirement village,
Right.
she had plenty of time, so she sorted through a whole heap of things and put them in albums for me. But I mean,
Oh,
some of
wonderful.
those photos I should be going through and digitizing,
Yes.
because there is
Yes.
no negatives, there is
Yes.
no other
Yeah.
copy.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
his sister has some, but and even if you're thinking you've got elderly parents, now is the time to kind of, before you need to kind of, when they finally pass, again, you're not in a really good mental state.
No.
I had to do this for
At that
my
time.
father, and you have a very short period of time between when they pass and all the funeral arrangements or whatever, and putting together something to remember them by, even in the notices. So do it now. If you've got elderly parents, do it now and say, have you got any photos of when you were a child, and blah blah blah. And the
Yes.
other thing
Yeah.
that does is reconnect maybe you with them, and find
Yes.
out. I didn't find out some things about my dad until I was doing that for his funeral. And
Wow.
he was a prisoner of war in the Second World War, and he had some very bizarre behaviours as he got older. And I realised why some of them were the way they were after he died, because of this prisoner of war
Right.
a habit that they had to have in order to stay alive.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's so true, Karen. I think, I think you've touched on such a wide range of ways in which photographs and going through this process of helping people see the importance and understand that there are steps that can be taken, and just acknowledging that it is a huge job. It
Mm,
really is a big job, and I think it's such an overwhelming one for people.
mm,
But we're here to say that there is hope, that there are some steps just to keep chipping away at being able to get to that end result of being able to have things organized and digitized and stored and backed up, and but it doesn't happen overnight, and it is true that it is overwhelming. And even though yourself, you've lost so much, and yet there's still a lot that can be done, um but just small steps and setting yourself
mm,
little goals,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to say, maybe by the end of, this block of time, if that's,
Mm-hmm.
a month or 6 months, that I'm
Yep.
going to digitize these old albums. And that's just the one first step or something like that, so that
Yes.
it's a manageable bite-sized pieces, just like you do, with your own work that you do,
Mm-hmm.
the sort of the step with assisting people through learning new skills
Mm.
is achievable, and it's just a system and a process to follow and go through,
mm,
and yeah, when you sort of break it down that way,
Yeah,
it's
a lot of
mm,
the
manageable.
work, well, some of the work I've been doing, especially since COVID, is trauma recovery and anxiety
mm.
things, and people develop those as a consequence of overwhelm.
Yes.
And
Mm,
the higher the emotion or the higher the level of anxiety, the lower the ability to think clearly and do anything. You
Mhm,
get
mhm,
stuck in that. So,
yeah.
yeah,
mm,
I am definitely a professor of one step at a time. Just do
mm,
it,
Yeah.
mm.
just bite size, schedule it, because
Yes.
people who don't schedule, other things will fill up their time, and so they
Yeah.
will never have time. So that, it's about seeing what you achieve, and you can only
Mm.
achieve it if you plan it in the first place.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. It's very true. We recently wrote an e-guide on how to help people stop procrastinating about their photos. And it goes through, and it's more of a psychological sort of
Yep.
awareness for people to
Mhm,
understand that, yes, we procrastinate. And obviously, our guide's about photos, but that's the same with anything, and especially I think in this COVID stage, like you're talking about, there's mindsets that really do sort of set in
mhm,
Mm.
that over time become those habits. And I think such a huge step forward for people is becoming aware of them, at least acknowledging them,
Mm-hmm.
and then taking small steps
mhm.
to move forward. And so, yeah, I agree. I'm a big believer, and there's nothing that isn't out of reach. You can anything is achievable when you just get the right supports around you, and the right knowledge to move forward, and a bit of hope. I think that's what people need.
Yeah. Mm,
I
Absolutely.
hope
Yeah.
to get through, and then just align yourself with some good tools. And some of these things you've shared, I think, has been really great. Obviously, from your business point of view, and then just from your practical experiences with the photos as well.
mm,
Mm.
mhm.
Yeah.
Um, so, just before we sort of wrap up and finish up, Karen, is there something that you'd like to leave with people, just some lasting advice or encouragement, just with people that might be sort of coming into the fire season, or just either from a personal point of view as well as their photos, or just something that you'd like to leave with us?
Yeah. I mean, ideally, in the perfect world, we would love to have the time to sort through our photos
Mm,
before we store them. But I mean, it is a lot easier now with digital, and there's services around that will do it for you. But
mm,
or you might have. I have a cousin who absolutely loves digitizing stuff. So my
There you
mother
go.
actually gave him a number of her albums, and he put them on for her. So you might have a friend or a relative that can do it much faster or easier and has the time to do it, or would like to do it for you as a favor, or in exchange of some scones or some cookies or something else.
So true.
Utilize those around you, because you never know what people like doing, and you should never assume
Yeah.
that they don't like doing it. So put the call out if you're too busy to do it, and say, hey,
Yeah.
would you have the time to do it? Retirees are a classic. That might have the time to do it, even so yeah, utilize those around you so that you don't get in that overwhelm. And it's really nice to hand over things like that that are on your to-do list that never seem to get done. But the other one of the benefits of this pandemic is that people have been forced to slow down and stay at home, and they've reconnected with passions and maybe had the time to go through old family photos with the kids, and because kids can't remember what they look like when they were 2, when they're 9 or 10.
True.
Teenagers would absolutely be mortified by
Yes, they are. I've got 2 of them.
But it could be, something different to do, or an activity to do. Say, put together your own album or something like that, or or take an hour once a week to sort through your photos and clear out the ones that you don't need. And the other thing that I would say is that it's great to take photos, but don't spend your entire time behind the lens or behind the camera. Actually take some good shots, take the time to take them, and then put the camera down and enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
Because the two
Absolutely.
together is what is the powerful thing in the long run.
Yeah. So great. So true. We're big believers on that too. So that's beautiful advice. So good. So Karen, just look, a huge thank you to you for your openness and being so prepared to share, and just such personal and emotional stories, really. I think that has been such an insight for so many in so many different ways. So just thank you so much for taking that time out to share that with us. If our listeners were wanting to, say, get in touch with you or hear a bit more about your story and what you do in your business, I'm sure there's been some interest also about your interesting book titles that you have, and some of those stories that you've shared. How can people get in touch with you?
The best place is to look up my LinkedIn or Facebook. So, and I do, my business name is quite complicated, but it's called the Matanya Effect, and that's the name of the horse that taught me everything I know about leadership. So all of my names are difficult for Australians. So Karen is really easy, spelt with a K. My surname is Ostenried, Ostenried. And you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm not as active on Insta. And the other thing is to look up my website, which is as in THE, Matanya Effect, spelled MATANYA, and effect EFFECT.com.au.
Good. And we will put the links in the show notes. So no problem with that. So thank you so much. Look, we really appreciate it. And as always, to our listeners, please just leave us some comments, questions, reviews. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. And just as we wrap up, again, thanks so much for joining us, Karen. I am Fiona from Photo Helper.
Been a pleasure.
I'm Chantal from Photos in Orders. Thank you so much, Karen.
Yeah,
my pleasure,
really.
ladies.
Yeah, it's been lovely. And until next time, we will see you in 2 weeks. And happy photo organising, everyone.